Leftist forces, CPN Maoist Center, Janata Samajwadi Party, CPN Unified Socialist and Nepal Communist Party announced the formation of the much-touted Socialist Front yesterday. The combined strength of the four parties makes the Socialist Front the third largest force in the House of Representatives. The four parties have formed the front, saying that it was for political stability. Good morning, I'm Abheudaya Shrestha, and these are the headlines of the hour. 493 structures at Pokhara's Fewa Lake Bank declared illegal. Border area maintained at 65 meters. Supreme Court orders to demolish illegal structures built on 1,200 ropenis of land. Only 88 out of a total of 1,300 colleges in the country acquire QAA certificate, a benchmark of quality education. No action against faulty colleges. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres calls on Israel to immediately cease all settlement activities in occupied Palestinian territory, says the activities have been a major obstacle to lasting peace. And Nepal to clash against USA at the ICC World Cup Global Qualifiers today. Match to kick off at 12:45 p.m. Nepal time. Nepal must win the match to increase chances of reaching the Super 6. The Supreme Court has declared that 493 structures near the banks of Fewa Lake in Pokhara are illegal. Maintaining the border area of Fewa Lake at 65 meters from the bank, the Supreme Court has issued an order to demolish all the illegally built structures within the border area. The Supreme Court issued the order to the federal government, Pokhara Metropolis and concerned entities to demolish all permanent and temporary structures built by encroaching land within 65 meters from the bank of Fewa Lake. The joint bench of Justices Kumar Regmi and Hari Prasad Puyal issued the order maintaining that the land 65 meters from the bank belongs to Fewa Lake. 1,200 ropenis of land around the lake, 65 meters from the bank of the Fewa Lake, is currently under the ownership of people who encroached the land. The Supreme Court has issued an order on April 29, 2018 to demolish all the structures built against the criteria issued 50 years ago. Meanwhile, instead of implementing the Supreme Court order, the Executive Board, led by then Mayor of Pokhara Metropolis, Man Bahadur GC, had decreased the criteria to 30 meters. The criteria of maintaining border area of Fewa Lake at 65 meters from the bank was issued in 2018. CPN Maoist Center, Janata Samajwadi Party, CPN Unified Socialist and Nepal Communist Party have announced the formation of a socialist front. The four parties have formed the front for what they have said political stability. At a program organized at the Rashtriya Sabha Griha, or the National Assembly Hall in Kathmandu yesterday, CPN Maoist Center Chairperson and Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal, CPN Unified Socialist Chair Madhav Kumar Nepal, Janata Samajwadi Party Chair Upendra Yadav and Nepal Communist Party General Secretary Netra Bikram Chand signed the agreement for the formation of the Socialist Front. At the program, Prime Minister Dahal said that the Socialist Front was formed after assessing past mistakes of unification and failure in implementation of plans. Premier Dahal said that the front would proceed with its plans against regressive forces. CPN Unified Socialist Chair Nepal said that the front was not formed to intimidate any political forces. He added that the front was a group of progressive forces that prioritizes national development. Nepal Communist Party General Secretary Chand said that the front was formed to discourage regressive entities. The University Grant Commission has set criteria for quality assurance and accreditation QAA certification, including adequate fiscal infrastructures, quality education, research, and 50% full-time faculty staff, among others. Academic institutions with QAA certification are considered appropriate for quality education and attract students and their parents and guardians as well. Despite great possibilities for the academic institutions, they have not appeared interested in receiving the QAA certification. According to the University Grant Commission, in the period of 14 years, of the 1,300 campuses across the country, only 88 colleges have received the QAA certification. Institutions with QAA certification can create new programs, develop curriculum, conduct examinations, and assess performance of students in an independent manner. The University Grant Commission provides such campuses 2.5 million to 80 million rupees in grants on the basis of assessment of students. The QAA certification enhances the credibility of the institutions both inside and outside the country and increases the possibilities of placement of students. Academic institutions receiving the QAA certification must renew their certification every 5 years. Therefore, it is equally challenging for them to retain their achievements. However, as the academic institutions have yet to pay interest towards receiving the QAA certification, it is imperative for the University Grant Commission to take this issue seriously. The International Food Policy Research Institute has released its Global Food Policy Report 2023, calling on stakeholders to build a more proactive response to disasters that have been increasing each year due to climate crisis, among others. Organizing an event in the capital yesterday, the Research Institute highlighted that growing impacts of climate change, protracted the COVID-19 pandemic, natural disasters, civil unrest, the Russia-Ukraine war, and inflation had exacerbated global food and fertilizer crisis. Speaking at the event, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Home Affairs Naran Kaji Shrestha assured that the Nepal government was actively participating in international efforts to tackle climate change and elaborated on existing programs to deal with multiple issues facing the South Asian region and the country.
Nepal government has been actively participating in various international initiatives to mitigate the impacts of climate change, promote sustainable development, and implement adaptation measures.
The two-day event hosts delegates and experts from around the world, especially the South Asian region. On the first day yesterday, experts dwelt on food crisis risk monitoring, fragility resilience, and policy responses to forced migration, building resilient food systems and crisis resilience. Today's session will focus on promoting gender equality in fragile and conflict-affected settings and adaptive safety nets for crisis recovery, among others. There is no doubt that climate crisis is a threat multiplier. With the onset of monsoon, we have already begun hearing of disasters that have claimed the lives of several individuals. But apart from the loss of lives, climate crisis has had a telling impact on the food ecosystem, threatening to push millions towards undernourishment and severe food insecurity, especially in lower and middle income countries. More in this report.
Between 2017 to 19, just above 10% households of Nepal faced severe food insecurity. By 2021, the graph has increased to around 14%. This is based on a report released on 19th of June, Monday, by the International Food Policy Research Institute, which has highlighted the lasting impacts of COVID pandemic, Russia-Ukraine war, and more alarmingly, the climate crisis as the factors that have triggered food crises around the world in lower and middle-income countries like Nepal.
I mean, Nepal is one of the most vulnerable to climate effects. But it's one of the most important region, in terms of like it totally is endowed with all the natural resources, etc. So how do we strengthen that? That's more important, So to build that resilience, I mean, in terms of how do we move towards more climate smart agriculture to increase the productivity, then the whole value chain starts. That's more important for Nepal.
With climate crisis, the number of natural disasters have been on the rise in recent years. In 2021, the Ministry of Forests and Environment reported that of the total crops lost each year, 90% loss is attributed to weather and climatic events like drought, excessive rainfall, floods and landslides. This, experts reiterate, calls for a climate-resilient agriculture system.
We have to develop an agricultural system, a food system which is much more resilient, okay? And for that we need to work both on the production side with the farmers and with the value chains, but also on the consumption side, dealing with the most vulnerable, protecting them, making sure they can access not just affordable food, but also nutritious food.
It is expected that in near future, more people will have increasingly less access to quality food, which the Institute says might result into 72 million more people being undernourished by 2050 if urgent actions are not taken.
स्थानीय तहलाई हामीले सक्षम बनाउन खोजिरहेका छौं र स्थानीय तहलाई फ्रन्टमा राखेर त्यहाँको इन्फर्मेसन सहजै सँगसम्म आउने र संघ र प्रदेशले स्थानीय तहलाई खाद्यान्नको हिसाबले जोखिमपूर्ण अवस्थामा रहेका पपुलेसनलाई एड्रेस गर्ने एउटा पद्धति छ भने अर्को चाहिँ संघ र प्रदेशले पनि त्यसलाई एउटा कोषहरू बनाएर त्यो कोष मार्फत पनि अब विपद प्राधिकरण नै छ त्यो विपद प्राधिकरण मार्फत पनि त्यसलाई हामी ह्यान्डल गर्छौं
In order to strengthen the food system, among many others, Nepal must introduce pragmatic measures to adapt and cope with the unavoidable impacts of climate crisis, reduce its trade deficit, and strive towards self-sufficiency. Sarah Sapsanama for Kantipur News, Kathmandu.
In our Public Voice segment, we had asked people in several provinces what should be done to put an end to the situation where farmers are compelled to throw their agricultural produces. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
Public Voice.
बारीबाट आउने कुराहरु सबै बन्द गर्दिनु रोक लगाउनु भने हाम्रो नेपालमा भएको उत्पादन सायद नेपालमै पुग्दैन अझै धेरै गर्नुपर्छ फ्याल्नै पर्दैन
किसान केन्द्र बनाएर पछि युज गर्न सकिन्छ
किसानबाट डाइरेक्ट आउनु पर्यो बीचमा माध्यम भएउनु भएन
सरकारले किसानहरूलाई बिउहरू अनुदानमा दिएर र त्यो बिउबाट उब्जेको खाद्य पदार्थहरू आफैले सही मूल्यमा खरिद गर्यो भने यस्तो अवस्था आउँदैन
उत्पादनको अब सबै चाहिँ सङ्कलन ग्यारेन्टी सरकार लिनु पर्यो
It's time now for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
Here's the question. What do you term the refusal of medical doctors who had studied under government scholarship to go to remote areas? Your options are A, feeble monitoring, B, lack of accountability, and C, no facilities. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B, or C, and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. And it's time now for the international update. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says construction of illegal Israeli settlements on Palestinian territory is driving tensions and violence. UN Secretary General Guterres has called on Israel to immediately cease all settlement activities in occupied Palestinian territory, describing Israel's plans to advance the building of Israeli settlements as driving tensions and violence and being a major obstacle to a lasting peace. The UN chief's comments come after the Palestinians were killed, including a 15-year-old boy and more than 90 others wounded in the fiercest clashes in years, which erupted when Israeli forces raided the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank yesterday. In the first such instance in almost 20 years, Israel sent helicopter gunships which fired rockets at targets in Jenin camp, while Palestinian fighters fought for hours with small arms and explosive devices that disabled several Israeli military vehicles, trapping troops inside. 8 Israeli soldiers were wounded in the clashes that lasted nearly 10 hours. On Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu approved plans for thousands of new housing units in the occupied West Bank, giving the far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich sweeping powers to expedite the construction of settlements which are illegal under international law. The plans for the approval of 4,560 housing units in various areas of the West Bank have been included on the agenda of Israel's Supreme Planning Council, which meets next week. Britain's Parliament delivered another blow to the political career of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson yesterday when it endorsed a report that concluded that he deliberately lied over rule-breaking parties. Johnson abruptly resigned from Parliament earlier this month after seeing an advance copy of the findings of a year-long investigation into his conduct during the COVID-19 pandemic when lockdown-breaking parties were held in Downing Street. The committee published its findings last week, concluding that Johnson had deliberately lied to colleagues when he assured the House of Commons that all COVID-19 rules had been followed at all times in government buildings. The report recommended Johnson should be denied a pass, giving him automatic access to Parliament, and would have recommended suspending him from the House of Commons for 90 days if he had not already resigned. Lawmakers in the House of Commons voted yesterday 354-7 to endorse the committee's report after a 5-hour debate on its findings. Parliament's decision to back the conclusions of the report does not stop Johnson from standing again to be a member of the House of Commons, but it is an embarrassing punishment for a politician who was still Prime Minister a year ago. Most politicians who spoke in Parliament yesterday criticized Johnson's behavior, while a handful of his supporters questioned the impartiality of the committee. Opinion polls show that Johnson is currently unpopular with most of the public, but he retains the backing of some Conservative Party members. It's time now for the sports news.
Sports news.
Team Nepal are playing against the United States of America today at the ICC World Cup qualifiers underway in Zimbabwe. The match is scheduled to kick off at 12:45 p.m. Nepal time at the Harare Cricket Stadium. In their first match of the tournament, Nepal had suffered an 8-wicket defeat against host Zimbabwe on Sunday and are aiming to make a comeback. Team Nepal are aiming to earn their first points against familiar opponents USA. In Sunday's match, Kushal Bhurtel had missed his century by just 1 run, while Asif Sheikh had scored 66 runs to help Nepal post a target of 291 runs for Zimbabwe. Despite an impressive batting display, Nepal's bowling and fielding aspects had a day to forget. For Nepal to make a comeback in the tournament, they will need to make improvements in their bowling and fielding departments. Meanwhile, USA had also suffered a 39-run defeat against West Indies on Sunday. Team Nepal are to play the USA for the first time since Monty Desai was appointed the head coach. And that's all for the moment. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.